Hello everyone and welcome to The Opinion, the talk show where your opinions matter. I am Mirna Santiago and joining me for our discussion today is my co-host Adeline Ortiz and our guest, attorney Donald Sanford.
Nice to be back with you. Thank you.
Welcome. Well, our topic for today is whether or not lookism should be prohibited under the law. And before we delve into that topic, we just want to give a thank you to Maurice from the Bronx, who sent in some comments saying that he really enjoys the show and the topic. So thank you for watching, Maurice.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, let's talk a little bit about lookism. As you guys know, there are certain industries. I guess we should define what lookism is. So
Absolutely.
there are certain industries that hire people or don't hire people based on how they look. The modeling industry is one that's famous for that. You have to be tall and thin and all this other stuff in order to get jobs in the modeling industry. But now lookism is making its way into our everyday lives. For instance, CVS, the pharmacy chain, is now requiring that their workers disclose their weight in order to obtain health care. If the workers fail to disclose their weight, what CVS does is they impose a surcharge of $50 a month, $600 a year for every month that you fail to disclose your weight. So people are really up in arms about this. There are people calling for laws to be passed, banning companies from doing things like this. And I guess what you're asking me is, what is my position on lookism and whether there should be a law that would prohibit it? And my opinion is no, quite frankly. And the reason for that is that we really don't need another law. There are so many laws out there for everything. We've talked about this when we're talking about employment discrimination, and I think we have blacks and Hispanics and ethnic orientation, sexual orientation, ethnicity, national origin. There's just so many laws already. I think if we need to add looks, it's just going to water down the whole thing even further. And to be quite honest also, if you think about it, employers have a vested interest in making sure that their employees are healthy because they have to pay for sick days. They have to train other people to cover for those employees if they're out. So if you now if you're going to bar lookism, if they can't now take into consideration how people look, whether they're overweight and that sort of thing, you're really going to impose a burden on employers. I'm going to go to Don because you're kind of giving me the side eye on this. So what do you think, Don?
I think there's certainly a good argument to be made that you want to have healthy employees in your workforce.
Yes.
Judging that based on appearance sake is not the way to go with it. And you start down a slippery slope when you start looking at people based upon strictly their appearance and whether or not that qualifies them for the job. There are some jobs, obviously, where appearances are important, as you said, in the modeling industry. Now, it would be lovely for me to go to Pathmark on Saturday morning and have Victoria's Secret models bagging my groceries, but that's not going to happen.
No.
Any more than when you go to get your tires rotated, your oil change, you have hunky men in tank tops servicing your car.
Wouldn't that be great?
So I think when you start down that path, you go down a very difficult road and one that we probably shouldn't go down at all. I'm certainly in favor of protecting those people who are being discriminated against based solely upon their appearance.
Oh, well,
I don't know.
I don't know about that. Go ahead. What do you say, Adeline?
Well, before I give you my opinion on it, I was just wondering, was that surcharge by CVS for every month that the employee fails to disclose their weight or does not meet a certain weight requirement? I was curious about that.
No, there's really no weight requirement, and that's really what CVS is saying. They're saying we're not saying that you have to be within certain parameters of weight. We just want you to disclose your weight so that if you are overweight, we can help you. We can give you guidelines or whatever so that you can get down to a healthier weight. But the surcharge is not for being fat. It's just for not telling us whether you're fat or not.
Okay. Well, I'm a little divided on this issue, actually. I think that on the one hand, yes, lookism should be prohibited. People should be judged based on their qualifications and their skills and their ability to do the job. And certainly when you discuss something like weight, that is definitely a difficult area in which to sort of judge a person because, again, that obesity is not entirely a protected class at this point, but there are disability concerns and certainly there are protections already in place under the Americans with Disabilities Act. Should we add to that? Probably
Yeah,
not.
that's it.
Probably not.
That's exactly the point,
I
yeah.
think that the anti-discrimination laws are already very difficult on everybody, actually. It's not just the employers. I mean, it's certainly burdensome on the employers in terms of getting a lot of frivolous lawsuits and having to constantly defend these lawsuits against the company, which costs companies millions of dollars a year. But then there's also a burden on the employer or the individual actually being discriminated against. It is not an easy burden to sustain, proving discrimination, and a lot of these cases really don't succeed at all in court. So how on earth are you now going to walk into court and say, oh, well, I was discriminated against on the basis of my looks. I didn't get the job, or I wasn't promoted because I'm overweight, or because I'm unattractive, or because I don't meet the company standards. And as Don mentioned, I know that there are a number of industries that do care about this issue. For example, weight management industry. I mean, I don't know about you, but if I walked into, Weight Watchers, and I'm looking to basically lose weight, and I'm being tended to by a 300-pound employee, I'm not going to have a lot of, a lot of confidence that that person is going to help me to meet my goals. So,
and I think each company has to have, I agree with you 100% on that, and I'm actually going to go back to you because you talk about it's discrimination, but it's not a discrimination, it's a preference. And the employer can't have a preference. Like Adeline says, these standards under the Employment Discrimination Act say that if an employer has a legitimate business reason, then it's not discrimination. And that would be the same thing with someone who is overweight. In this case, CVS is saying we have a legitimate business reason to make sure that our employees are healthy, to keep our costs down for workers' compensation. For instance, if you're overweight and you're tipping the scales and you're trying to climb up something and you fall now because the ladders are of certain parameters or whatever. Or if you're taking a lot of sick days because you have diabetes, because you have some of these other attendant diseases that come with being overweight. So they have a legitimate business reason for keeping their costs down. And as to the discrimination, every employer can actually have a preference. There's nothing within the employment discrimination law that says that you cannot have your preference. If you have a job out and it's for a Spanish teacher, for instance, and you have 49 black people who apply and 1 white person, and you hire the white person, as long as you can articulate a reason for hiring that white person, a legitimate business reason, the numbers are not going to go against you in any way. So I don't believe it's discrimination. It's again a preference. This has already been talked about. In fact, there was a lawsuit against Hooters, I think it was, because there were men who wanted to be Hooters waiters. They wanted to be wait staff at Hooters. And the court said that that Hooters had a legitimate business interest in, they had an image, right? Basically what they have is big-breasted women serve the food, and as long as they weren't discriminating against the men in the conditions of employment, if they gave men these jobs and they're paying them the same benefits and what have you, they don't have to be the wait staff. As long as they're getting paid the same and the same discrimination, there's no discrimination.
I'll give you a response and I'll give you a story.
Okay.
The response first, I think you're almost making a separate but equal argument there, which I think is a very dangerous way to go.
Yes.
If you're on the bus but you're riding in the back of the bus, you're still being discriminated against. And if you're there because based upon your skin color, or based upon your gender, based upon your sexual orientation, you're still being discriminated against, even though you're on the bus. Mm-hmm. I'll tell you this story. As a marathon runner, running New York Marathon one year, coming up First Avenue, there was a guy in front of me in a t-shirt, and he was enormous. And I was running a fairly good pace. And on the back of his t-shirt it said, "Can you believe a big fat slob like me is in front of you?" And he had put that on his t-shirt, and it was a very good message. Yeah. Don't judge the book by its cover. Mm-hmm. And just by looking at an employee or looking at their weight and saying, well, that's too much, there are other ways to determine what a healthy weight is. There's body mass index.
Yes.
A bodybuilder is going to be at a much bigger weight than a person that is a marathon runner. They're just different body frames altogether. So I think what CVS is doing here is a very dangerous path. And I think that if we don't protect folks from lookism, which is an interesting term, mm-hmm. but I'll use it for the purpose of this show, we go down a very dangerous path in our society.
Absolutely, and I agree. At least in terms of what CVS is doing, when you're looking at weight, you're really treading some dangerous waters there, because if you're looking at weight in terms of potential illnesses, okay, then that's no different than requiring an employee to disclose that they have cancer or that they're HIV positive or that they have other, diabetes or that they have other sort of illnesses that may potentially run the company a lot of money in terms of their health insurance expenses. That is positively discrimination. Make no mistake about it. I mean, you're discriminating against someone on the basis of a disability or a perceived disability, which is included in the discrimination laws under the Americans with Disabilities Act. So with respect to that particular issue and with CVS, yeah, that would be a form of discrimination. However, I know that years ago, and I don't know if they still do, but the airline industry discriminated on the basis of weight, because of course, you know that on an airplane you have those sort of narrow aisles and so on and so forth. And obviously, if you're a flight attendant that's a little larger than that little push cart that they used to have to run up and down, and you can't do it, and then obviously, in this case, absolutely. In this case, they are legitimately looking to determine what your weight is because there's a bona fide business reason. I think that we need to be clear here in what we're talking about when we discuss the anti-discrimination laws. The discrimination statutes don't say that you can't discriminate against people. Okay, that you absolutely cannot discriminate for any reason against individuals. You can, companies can discriminate, okay, in terms of those areas that are not protected classes. I can discriminate against ugly people, short people, okay? People who are too tall. For example, the fire department. The fire department once had a height and weight requirements for their firefighters. Again, and then women started to sue the fire departments because they said, well, we're not 6 feet tall. We're not, 200 pounds of muscle. It's gender discrimination, or it's having a detrimental impact or disparate impact. Your requirements are having a disparate impact on women as a group, as a collective group, and so that and this is a protected class, women. So instead of the height and weight requirements, they said, fine. Well, then if you can throw this, sort of 200-pound sack over your shoulder and you can run up and down, 20 flights, you've got the job. That's different. You can do that. Okay? So you can discriminate against someone unless it's a protected category of individuals.
No, you could have your preference. I think that's really what we were saying is you can.
What is a preference but a discrimination? You
can. And I get what you were saying about, there's certain preferences that could give rise to discrimination. I absolutely get that. And I get about the separate but equal. But I think the anti-discrimination laws were meant to cover immutable characteristics. You can't change the color of your skin. You can't change where you were born. You can't change whether you're a woman or a man in most instances. Being fat is not something that you cannot change. It's an exact science. You burn off more calories than you take in, you will lose weight. So I think it's a slippery slope, actually, if we go down the other way, if we start protecting people for things that they can change themselves,
Well, then you have to consider hypothyroid conditions and other medical conditions which may lead to obesity. So there is no clear-cut. If there was, we would all be svelte. There's no clear-cut way to say we're all going to make ourselves thin. I think it's a dangerous path.
Absolutely. There could be a variety of reasons for somebody being overweight. Yes, we did. What's your problem with overweight people? But no, there could be a variety of reasons, that someone may be overweight, and you can't just use that as a single determining factor of what their health condition may be. I mean, you may have just had a baby. For God's sake, I tipped the scale at 200 pounds with my first child. Okay, and the morning that I gave birth to him, I was hoping that he was at least 98 pounds. Okay, I was like, please let me have this 98-pound baby because I don't know how I'm going to get rid of this. So there's.
But that's different. I think that's different. I don't think we need to make excuses for someone who is, because of their lifestyle or because of whatever. There are things you can do to lose weight. Even if you have a thyroid issue, even if you have an issue, there are definite things you can do to lose weight. That's why I call it an exact science. Well, you can go to the doctor and worry about that and try to fix it. And that's what CVS is actually trying to do. They're not saying we're going to discriminate against you because you're fat, because obviously they hired you. Whether you were fat or not, they hired you. They felt that you can do the job. You can be a cashier. You can be a stock person. What they're saying is, let us help you. If you are overweight, right, then sign up for this, and we'll send you information on how to lose weight or help you with some products or whatever it is that they're doing.
Actually, Mirna, I disagree with you.
I do too.
They're doing the exact opposite. They're not incentivizing you, they're punishing you.
Exactly.
If there was an incentive for greater participation in a physical activity 3 times a week, and you bring a report from your gym, then you can incentivize and give a bonus. Now that's an incentive program. What they're doing at CVS is punishing people based
Exactly.
upon an assumption. And I think Adeline hit it right on the head. If someone is pregnant, they're going to weigh more than they do when they're not pregnant. And that's kind of the difficult path you go down there. That's where the slippery slope begins, is just starting from an assumption and then sliding down the path from there.
Well, I agree that it's a punishment, sort of.
Thank you.
I do. That's the one thing I agree with you, that sometimes you can't punish people, but then that's the reason we punish our children as well. I think CVS, because it is a pharmacy company, because it is a lifestyle company, if you will, they want to make sure that they are hitting certain things on the head. And I think it's actually a good program. I don't like the fact that people do have to pay those $600 if you refuse to disclose your weight. But you could not disclose your weight for other reasons. I'm sure CVS would be just as concerned with someone who had anorexia as someone who was obese. It would still be the same issues with the health issues and also the lack of energy and what have you if you weren't taking in enough calories as it was if you're obese. They would be as concerned about that as well. So I don't think it's just a matter of we're making an assumption. They're not. They're saying if you fail to disclose this information, regardless if you're 200 pounds or 98 pounds, it's still going to be the same.
You are still dealing with a disability issue or the perception of a disability issue, and that is absolutely discrimination.
And when you start there, you also
Yes,
look
you
at,
do.
then you can start saying, okay, how much do you drink every night? Do
Exactly.
you smoke? How frequently do you smoke? Do you use recreational drugs?
What about psychological
What kind of shape
reports?
do you come into?
psychological
reports.
report.
And then you start really winnowing down the pack into, okay, I want a trim, fit, non-smoking, non-drinking, non-drug using, psychologically balanced employee for minimum wage.
And they will have absolutely
I wish
no
you good luck
employees.
with that.
Good luck.
But they're always going to have employees. That's the point. And they are providing health care. You can opt out of health care. You can say, I don't want your health care, and I'm not going to disclose my weight.
Where do you draw the line? What about moral character? Right? What about moral character? What is your propensity to engage in certain actions and certain activities?
Because then they would have less theft,
there is no way to sort of design a perfect gauge for all of these things, and that's what the interview process is for. And anybody who's been on an interview recently knows that it's nearly impossible to get jobs these days, because you have several interviews. You're interviewing with several individuals, and all of these people are there for one reason: to figure out exactly all of these things that you're talking about, Don. What kind of person are you? What kind of issues do you have? Are you a psychologically balanced individual? Do you drink? Do you smoke? And weight is something that CVS can guess at by looking at you.
But they're not doing it by that. They've already hired you. That's exactly the point. They didn't discriminate against you that way. And their process is actually a blind process where you're disclosing it supposedly to an independent company. And then that independent company tries to find ways to help you get healthier. So if in fact you do disclose that you're a smoker, you're a 2-pack-a-day smoker, then they try to give you programs to help you quit smoking. Again, it's a legitimate business reason to make sure that their employees are healthy. I don't see, again, we need to kind of go back to the lookism thing, because we're talking about other stuff. We're talking about, psychological propensity and all this other stuff. We need to kind of get back to the lookism. Should that be?
Well, let me bring it back to you this way then. If they have nicotine-stained fingers, if they have a frequently red nose, are they heavy drinkers, are they heavy smokers? We're going into people's personal lives where I don't think businesses belong. The question is, do they show up for work? Do they do the job? Do they do it well? Those are the questions that you want to have asked and answered before you hire someone or before you maintain someone on your payroll. Beyond that, I don't think we delve any deeper than that. I take your point that there are some places where you want to judge people based upon their appearance. I'm never going to grace the cover of Essence magazine. They won't sell very many copies that way, and that may be a good thing. But I think we also have to be somewhat reasonable about where we draw the line, and I think where CVS has gone here is completely unreasonable.
And that's understandable, but again, we cannot protect everybody, and I think what you're arguing is that this should be prohibited. So basically someone who is obese or who's unfortunate looking or whatever should be protected under the laws, and they should not be. My position is that they absolutely should not be. Should we allow companies to start intruding into people's lives? Perhaps not. Again, I see a legitimate business reason for CVS to do this, so I don't have a problem with that. I think that if you're within normal parameters, or even if you're not, if you tell yourself, I'm going to waive out of your health program, CVS, I don't want to disclose my weight, I'll get my own health insurance, or you can say, I'll take the $50 a month extra, and I'm going to let you know what my weight is. And you don't have to take their suggestions. If their double-blind company or whatever is sending you suggestions every month, opt out of it. But you're not getting charged the $600. I think this is much ado about nothing, that these people are complaining and picketing and carrying on about, they want to be protected under the laws. I just don't see it as being something that needs to be protected.
No, I'm definitely not in favor of expanding the anti-discrimination statutes to include lookism. So what if you want to hire someone on the basis of being an attractive person or because they fit a certain profile that you're trying to meet? Certainly, I can see the sense in it when you come to the weight management companies, or gyms, Lucille Roberts, you want people who are fit and who are, attractive. This is what you want, because you want the people walking in through the door, the customers, your client, your target base, to say, that's exactly what I want to look like. That's what I want to look like in 6 months when you're done with me. So no, I'm not in favor of expanding the statutes to include lookism. I think that the companies should be able to hire whoever they want on the basis of what they look like if they feel like it.
But you still feel that CVS was intrusive in whatever.
Absolutely. And by the way, I have absolutely no problem with Hooters hiring a bunch of Vin Diesel lookalikes and just putting them in shirtless kind of outfits. Is fine with me.
That's exactly the point.
Hey.
Well, we need to move on. Thank you, Dawn. That was very, inspiring. Your fight for the unfortunate and obese looking. I'll meet you in the back, and we're gonna have it out on that one. But we do need to move on to our lightning round now, and our lightning round is actually a very interesting one this week. There is a child in Colorado who has been in the news lately. I've seen this child on a whole bunch of morning shows, and the name is Coy Mathis. Coy Mathis is 7 years old, and Coy Mathis was born biologically a male, but she wants to be addressed as a female. And the issue why we're discussing Coy Mathis is because her parents are suing the Colorado school system because the school system would not allow Coy Mathis to use the girls' bathroom. The school system is saying, being that Coy has male genitals, she either needs to use the boys' bathroom, or she needs to go use the single bathroom in the principal's room, or she needs to go use the bathroom in the nurse's office. Now, my question is, and there are people who are talking about this and saying that 7 years old, I think Coy Mathis has been dressing as a female for 2 years now. I've obviously mentioned that her parents have her on all of these news shows. And the question is whether Coy Mathis at 7 years old is too young to decide whether he or she is transgender. So, Adeline, let's start with you.
I don't think that 7 years old is too young. My godson is gay. He's 23 years old now, but if you ask me when we knew he was gay, by the time he was 5 years old, honestly, 5 or 6 years old. I think that all children go through this sort of stage where they are experimenting, with different things. So a girl wants to dress like a boy or play with, Tonka trucks or what have you, and boys want to dress like girls. I have a boy and a girl, so I've seen it. I've certainly seen it. But there comes a point where it goes beyond just, that sort of phase, and where they're actually identifying, where you could see that this child is actually identifying with the opposite gender as, being a more comfortable fit for themselves. And certainly I saw that in my godson, Jonathan. By the time he was 6 years old, he only wanted Barbie dolls. It wasn't a phase, he wanted to play with Barbie dolls. He wanted long hair. He wanted long nails. He was very feminine in every possible way.
Let me ask you this, because, miss the sort of the whole heart of the lightning round, which is whether it's a nature issue or nurture. So you're saying that with but is your godson transgender or is he just gay?
He's gay, and I've also worked with transgender people who the same thing. I mean, they just say that they felt that they were just born in the wrong body. That plain and simply from the moment that they were born, that they were young, that they were small, they never felt right in their own skin. And I don't think that it takes that this is something that you intellectualize about. You just feel it. So I think it's a product of nature.
Don. And we're going to have to keep you down to a minute. I'm sorry, we're running short of time, but what do you think?
My son would like to eat pepperoni and prosciutto and stay up until midnight. My job as a parent is to tell him no. At a certain age, he's going to be able to make decisions for himself. But at 5 years old, he doesn't decide his bedtime. He didn't decide what he was going to eat. He didn't decide where he was going to go, what time he was going to come back. I parented him. At 5 years old, a child should not be making these decisions. They certainly should not be dragged in front of the television cameras while they're going through such a decision-making process. Whether it's nature or nurture is irrelevant. It should be done privately and not publicly.
And I absolutely agree. I think that's my opinion as well, is that children have to be socialized. I have a son, and I know when he was 3 or 4 years old, my husband was working a lot, and I would take him with me to the nail salon. And of course, I'm getting my nails painted pink, and he was like, oh, that looks like a pretty color. Can I get my nails painted pink?
He's going to kill you just telling that story.
And I'm like, no, you may not. And the reason children aren't hatched from eggs and left out by themselves is because we do have to parent them. And I had to tell my child, when you're 18 and you want to get your nails painted pink, by all means go ahead. But right now, you're not getting your nails painted pink. You can have a back massage or something else that men actually do. I think it's incumbent on the parents to socialize their children, and unfortunately in this case with Coy Mathis, just because he wanted to dress up in a tutu or something, their parents put him in pigtails and put him in a tutu. I think it wasn't the proper way to go. They should have given this child a little more time to figure out for himself, and they definitely should not have been dragging Coy Mathis
that I disagree with, sure.
Yeah. So, well, that is all the time that we have for today, but thank you so much for watching, and we look forward to getting your comments and your opinions on theopiniontalkshow.com, and you have our email, so please email Adeline or myself. Thank you.
Yes, bye.